In the 1860s, Manhattan's train travel was madness. Four different railroad companies dumped passengers at four separate stations scattered across the city. Steam engines belched black smoke through open air tracks that sliced through neighborhoods. Pedestrians dodged locomotives on street level crossings, while cargo trains blocked traffic for hours. The noise was deafening. Metal grinding against metal, whistles shrieking, conductors shouting over the din. Soot covered everything, turning white shirts gray and making breathing difficult. But beneath this industrial chaos, a bold vision was forming. Engineers and architects began to imagine something unprecedented: a single, magnificent terminal that could unite the city's fractured rail system. No one suspected that this dream would create both the world's largest train station and one of New York's most enduring mysteries. By the 1850s, New York had transformed into America's commercial powerhouse, yet its railroad infrastructure remained dangerously fragmented. Four competing companies, the New York Central, New York and Harlem, New York and New Haven, and Erie Railroads, operated independent terminals across Manhattan, creating a transportation nightmare for travelers and residents alike. The city's streets had become deadly battlegrounds where pedestrians, horse drawn carriages, and steam locomotives competed for the same space. Accidents were common, and fatalities weren't unusual. In 1871, railroad magnate Cornelius Vanderbilt attempted to bring order to this chaos by building Grand Central Depot at 42nd Street. This massive structure consolidated three of his railroad lines under one roof, but the solution proved temporary. Within 2 decades, the depot was overwhelmed by Manhattan's explosive growth. By 1900, over 500 trains per day squeezed through its overcrowded tracks. The wealthy residents along Park Avenue suffered particularly from this industrial invasion. Their elegant mansions stood in stark contrast to the belching locomotives that thundered past day and night. The constant drone of engines, clatter of metal wheels, and shriek of whistles made normal conversation impossible when trains passed. Even worse was the layer of black soot that settled on everything: windowsills, clothing, lungs. Behind the scenes, a young engineer named William Wilgus had begun developing radical ideas about electrification and underground tracks. Vanderbilt's grandson, William Vanderbilt, now controlled the railroad empire and recognized the growing public resentment toward steam locomotives. But the railroad's leadership resisted major changes, citing prohibitive costs and technical challenges. The status quo might have continued for years, if not for a catastrophe that would change everything. On January 8th, 1902, in the smoke-filled darkness of the Park Avenue Tunnel, a New Haven Railroad train rear-ended another locomotive that had stopped for a signal. The wooden passenger cars splintered and caught fire. 15 passengers died in the crash, and dozens more were injured. The tunnel quickly filled with thick black smoke, hampering rescue efforts and causing panic among survivors trying to escape. The public outrage was immediate and fierce. Newspapers ran graphic accounts of victims stumbling through smoke-choked tunnels, gasping for breath. City officials, already concerned about railroad safety, threatened to ban all steam locomotives from Manhattan below 42nd Street. This ultimatum forced the railroad's hand. Electrification was no longer just a good idea. It had become an existential necessity. William Wilgus seized this moment. The brilliant engineer proposed something far more ambitious than mere electrification. His vision called for demolishing the existing depot entirely and digging deeper underground to create a revolutionary two-level terminal with 46 tracks. Electric trains would eliminate smoke and allow for completely covered platforms. Most radically, Wilgus suggested covering the underground tracks with new buildings and streets, creating valuable real estate where belching locomotives once ran. The railroad executives were initially stunned by the scale of Wilgus's proposal and its estimated cost of $35 million, nearly $1 billion in today's dollars. But the plan's genius lay in its self-funding mechanism. By covering the underground tracks with developable land, the railroad could sell or lease air rights to fund much of the construction. It was a revolutionary concept that would transform urban development for the next century. With reluctant approval from railroad leadership, work began in 1903 on what would become the most complex construction project New York had ever seen. The monumental challenge, demolished the existing station while maintaining continuous train service for thousands of daily passengers. Wilgus described it as tearing down a house room by room while the family continues to live in it. The human cost of this massive undertaking fell heavily on immigrant workers, primarily Italian and Irish laborers, who dug the enormous underground caverns with picks, shovels, and primitive steam shovels. They worked in dangerous conditions, facing cave ins, explosions, and accidents. Over 200 workers were injured during construction, and at least 10 lost their lives. One worker, Giuseppe Briganti, wrote in a letter home to Italy, "The tunnels are dark and the air is bad. When the dynamite goes off, we run, but sometimes not fast enough. 3 men died last month when the ceiling came down. The pay is good, but many wonder if they will live to spend it." As crews excavated more than 3 million cubic yards of rock and earth, enough to create a small mountain, engineers tackled the complex challenge of converting the steam railroad to electric power. New signals, switches, and control systems had to be designed from scratch. The railroad purchased a massive power plant in Port Morris to generate electricity for the new trains. Everything had to be built while maintaining daily service for commuters. Financial problems repeatedly threatened the project. By 1909, costs had ballooned to over $43 million, straining even the vast resources of the Vanderbilt Railroad empire. Labor strikes further complicated progress, as workers demanded better safety conditions and fair wages. The project seemed in constant danger of financial collapse. Meanwhile, daily commuters navigated a construction zone of epic proportions. Temporary wooden walkways guided passengers through half-demolished structures, while new steel frameworks rose around them. One commuter described the experience as walking through the skeleton of a dying dinosaur, while its replacement is being built inside it. Small business owners near the terminal faced difficult choices. Many shops that had served railroad passengers for decades were displaced by construction. Some relocated nearby, hoping to recapture their clientele when the new terminal opened, while others simply closed permanently, unable to survive the disruption. By 1910, as the terminal's magnificent framework took shape, public sentiment began to shift from irritation to anticipation. The sheer scale of the project impressed even the most jaded New Yorkers. The main concourse would measure 275 feet long, 120 feet wide, and 125 feet high, large enough to fit the entire original Grand Central Depot inside it. 46 platforms would serve 30 miles of track on 2 underground levels. The architectural firm of Reed and Stem, working with Warren and Wetmore, designed a Beaux-Arts masterpiece with soaring spaces and classical details. French sculptor Jules Félix Coutin was commissioned to create the monumental 48-foot-high sculpture group for the terminal's facade, featuring Mercury, Hercules, and Minerva surrounding a massive clock. Inside, a spectacular celestial ceiling would span the main concourse, featuring 2,500 stars painted in gold leaf against a turquoise sky. As February 2nd, 1913 approached, the designated opening day, anticipation reached fever pitch. Newspapers published special sections detailing the terminal's features and marveling at its scale. When the doors finally opened, more than 150,000 people flooded in to witness what many called the gateway to a continent. The public's reaction exceeded all expectations. People stood in the main concourse, heads tilted back, mouths open in wonder at the vast celestial ceiling. The enormous space, naturally lit through massive windows and uncluttered by columns, created a sense of awe that many compared to entering a cathedral. One visitor wrote, "It feels as though America has built its own pantheon, not to gods, but to the power of human movement and connection." The terminal's revolutionary design incorporates unprecedented amenities, separate arrival and departure levels, a complex network of ramps instead of stairs, elegant waiting rooms, high-end restaurants, and even a terminal within a terminal for wealthy passengers. A visitor could mail a letter, have shoes shined, get a haircut, shop for clothing, enjoy a gourmet meal, and cash a check, all without leaving the building. Perhaps most revolutionary was the terminal's impact on its surroundings. As the tracks disappeared underground, Park Avenue transformed from a sooty industrial corridor into Manhattan's most prestigious address. Within a decade, luxury apartment buildings, hotels, and office towers replaced the factories and warehouses that had dominated the area. Property values skyrocketed, with land prices increasing tenfold in some locations. The terminal's success wasn't universal, however. As rents climbed, many working-class families and small businesses were forced to relocate. Critics noted that the magnificent public space primarily served the comfortable middle and upper classes, while many of the laborers who built it could no longer afford to live nearby. Grand Central's completion coincided with America's ascendance as a global power. The terminal seemed to embody the nation's industrial might, engineering prowess, and cultural aspirations. It quickly became more than just a transportation hub. It was a symbol of American achievement, a cathedral of commerce and movement. Other cities took notice: Chicago, Los Angeles, and Washington. D.C. studied Grand Central's design as they planned their own terminals. The concept of air rights, building above rail infrastructure, revolutionized urban planning nationwide. The terminal's elegant integration of multiple transportation modes became a model for cities worldwide. By the 1920s, Grand Central had become the busiest train station on Earth, handling more than 65 million passengers annually. Its vast underground network expanded to include connections to the subway system and a secret platform that led directly to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, a discreet entry point reportedly used by President Franklin Roosevelt to hide his wheelchair use from the public. The terminal weathered many challenges in the decades that followed. The rise of automobile travel and commercial aviation in the mid-20th century dramatically reduced passenger rail service. By the 1960s, faced with declining revenues, the Penn Central Railroad proposed demolishing Grand Central and replacing it with a modern office tower. This threat galvanized preservationists, including former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, who fought a landmark legal battle to save the terminal. Their victory before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1978 established the legal foundation for architectural preservation nationwide and ensured Grand Central's survival. After decades of neglect, the yard in the 1990s saw a comprehensive restoration that returned the terminal to its original glory. Workers removed decades of cigarette smoke from the celestial ceiling, revealing that the stars had been painted backward, an astronomical error or artistic choice that remains one of the building's enduring mysteries. The $200 million project preserved the terminal's historic character while adapting it to modern needs. Today, Grand Central serves over 750,000 people daily and hosts high-end retail shops and restaurants alongside its transportation functions. The building that began as a practical solution to Manhattan's railway chaos has become one of New York's most beloved public spaces, a place where people still look up in wonder at its celestial ceiling and whisper secrets at the famous Whispering Gallery. Behind the marble facades and soaring spaces lies a story of human ambition, ingenuity, and sacrifice. The terminal represents both progress and displacement, beauty and power. Its creation required destroying an older world to build something unprecedented, much like America itself. Grand Central proved that public infrastructure could inspire as well as serve, that practical necessity could give birth to transcendent beauty. The station that began in chaos became a symbol of order, proving that vision and determination could transform not just a building, but a city's heart. Its greatest legacy may be the demonstration that public spaces, when designed with ambition and executed with care, can elevate daily life and create moments of wonder in the midst of our rushed existence. More than a century after its completion, Grand Central Terminal remains what its creators intended. Not just a place to begin or end a journey, but a destination in itself.